Okay, Mr. Chair, we can proceed in 3, 2, 1.
I'll now call to order the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee. I will begin by reading the land acknowledgement statement. On November 9th, 2023, we acknowledge that this sacred land in which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and the water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together we may care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of the mutual history of the nation, building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. I'm John Wanless, Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. I'll now introduce the committee members and staff in attendance. Please raise your hand when I state your name. Jay Brennan, Councillor. Jacqueline Grimes.
Present.
Yvonne Robert.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Robinson.
Present.
To review, committee members are asked to raise their hand and wait until called upon by the chair if they wish to speak. Item number 2. Can I have a motion for approval of agenda? Moved by Stephen, seconded by Jacqueline. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes from the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, October 12th, 2023. A motion moved by Yvonne, seconded by Jay. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of monetary interest. I'll now open the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting to consider revisions to application B22-03 for 17-23 Becca Street North and 7 William Street East. This meeting is your opportunity to provide feedback on this application, and the Planning Advisory Committee welcomes any question and comments you may have. We encourage you to provide the feedback to this public meeting as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited if a written or oral comment is not submitted. The Planning Advisory Committee is the decision-making authority for the consent application. The committee will review the application and any comments or concerns from the public to inform their decision. I'll now pass the meeting over to Richard Grant to report on the proposed revisions to application B22-03. Following their presentation, we will open the floor to comments from the applicant or their agent and from the public. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we'll be going over consent application B2203 for 7 William Street East and 17-23 Beckwith Street North. Here we can see the severance sketch. Well, this is the zoning map site sketch, where it shows the proposed severance of 7 William Street East, that is in blue there, and the black would be the retained lands at 23 Beckwith Street North. The applicant has requested a revision to the conditional approval of consent application B2203 to remove the easement that was proposed originally. The application was brought to the committee earlier in December of 2022. Because he wishes to, I guess he's no longer going with his development plan for 1723 Beckwith, which had received site plan approval in 2021. So in December 2022, when this was first brought forward to the committee, it was brought forward with 3 additional applications, well, 2 additional applications. So the applications were proposed to facilitate the building expansion at 1723 Beckwith Street North and provide access and parking behind the existing buildings and allow for the vacant lot at 7 William Street West to be sold separately. Application 2203, which is the application we're discussing today, originally were proposed to sever the lands described as 7 William Street East to create a vacant lot. That would be 339 meters in size, and also to create a 169 meter easement currently consisting of a parking lot to benefit the retained land at 17 to 23 Beckwith. So you can see here on the severance sketch, the blue outlining would be the area that would be the easement. That's the easement that he no longer currently wants. But this is what the original application B2203 was requesting, to propose an easement that would benefit the retained lot, as well as sever the parcel for 7 William that would be benefiting 7 William Street East. This is more just for context and background. The second application would be B2204, which proposed to create a 33-meter easement behind the existing 17 to 23, the existing commercial building at 17 to 23 Beckwith Street North, and provide access to the proposed lot at 7 William Street East. So the easement that would be created would be in blue there. That would be the easement that would be benefiting the retained lot, rather the severed lot at 7 William Street East. The last application, B2205, which proposed to create a 57-meter easement from William Street East to provide a permanent legal access to the parking areas to the rear of the adjacent properties. And that would be the easement right there, highlighted in blue. So the two applications, B2204 and B2205, have not been changed. So this is just more information as opposed to what was originally discussed in December 2022. Because the applicant is proposing to no longer go forward with his redevelopment plans at 17 to 23 Beckwith, he's requesting that the application B2203 be revised to reflect that the easement is no longer required. So what would happen is the only thing that would come, the outcome of this meeting would be that the severed lands would be the only thing that would be required as per this condition. So the severed lands would be the entire section here. So he's no longer going to create an easement, essentially. The entire thing would be severed and sold for whatever purposes he so chooses. Now, staff would recommend that the lot that is to be severed, once it's being severed, that in the event that is no longer, in the event that it is not developed within a meaningful amount of time, that it be landscaped. So the original proposal was attached to a site plan control agreement for 17 to 23 Beckwith when he's proposing to redevelop that site. And as part of that condition of that agreement, that the lot that's going to be severed would be meaningfully developed in 2 years, or there would be landscaping. So staff is recommending that as a part of condition that they go into a development agreement where if the lot is not developed within a certain number of time, that we would have it landscaped, just to ensure that whoever purchases the property would not leave it vacant for a time immemorial. So because this is only just a minor revision, it was circulated as in accordance with the Planning Act, but that's all that we had to do. There was no additional feedback provided or any other comments provided. So as discussed, the proposal will be creating the vacant lots, and the building potential for the lot still remains the same. And it would also allow for the removal of the proposed easement as discussed and the future development of the separate lot. Right, as a condition of site plan agreement, there was a landscaping security as discussed previously that would enable the lot to be landscaped in the event that it was not developed according to the site plan control agreement. In summary, planning staff are of the view that the revision of approval for the consent application B2203 to create a vacant lot to be accessed from William Street East broadly meets the intent of the PBS and the town's official plan. Here are the following recommendations. I would just add that an additional, recommendation would be to allow the owner to enter into the development agreement with the town to ensure that if the land is not sold and developed in a reasonable amount of time, that it's landscaped. That's the only additional condition that I would impose here. And that is the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Richard. We have no agent here or applicants. Has the committee got any questions they want to? Jacqueline?
Mr. Chair, just a question for Richard. So the reasonable amount of time is 2 years?
Well, that's what I would suggest personally, but in terms of what the committee would like, I'm open to suggestions that we can get into the applicant.
Just seems like a long time to sit there. Taken. My opinion. And sorry, one more question, Mr. Chair. So is that something that gets registered on title? So if they sold that property in 6 months, then that 2-year window, let's say, still needs to be enforceable even with a new owner?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, well, Mr. Chair, through Mr. Chair, I do believe that a shorter time frame is be realistic, say a year.
Any more questions?
I do. Just on that point, did you just say 1 year would be more realistic, or?
Yes, that's what I'm asking, if that makes more sense, a year instead of 2, to, I guess, enforce that development. If it doesn't.
You on?
In this day and age of having difficulties getting consultants and planners and so on to look at files on a fairly rapid time period, 2 years seems appropriate to me.
To landscape?
Pardon?
Just to landscape it? 2 years is a long time, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
2 years is a long time for weeds to grow and the place to look like tumbleweeds in our downtown core. But I appreciate that. So true what you said.
I have a question. Are they still going to use the back portion of that property for parking?
Well, if they no longer are requiring the easement, then yes.
So what you're talking about is from the parking up to the street?
Now let's go back to the images to make it easier to get us. Yeah, so you're asking about the back end of the property?
Yeah, see there was 3 parking spots back there
That's right.
at the back, at the bottom end of that. The blue part?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there's 3 parking spots there, so you're talking about landscaping the rest from there out to William Street.
Right, so let me go back to, well, the same thing either way. So that small yellow piece right there,
Yeah,
originally the intent was that if that was going to be severed and sold,
yeah,
it'd be landscaped if it was not developed in 2 years.
okay.
So the intent is that a development agreement would essentially capture that condition and enforce those same things on anyone who sold their property. Now, considering the fact that the easement would no longer be required to be the entire lot, I guess would be up for the sale.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Carl, you had your hand up there?
Yeah, I was just, if I may, Mr. Chair, yes, I was just providing a little bit of, so I believe what's being proposed here is sort of an either or option. So either the lot is, you either get your building permit or have a a landscape provision, one or the other on that property, so that is not a condition, so that is not just a vacant lot. So one or the other would need to happen within 2 years, or a time period, which is whatever time period is specified by the committee. So I think when looking at landscaping as an example, if the lot is ultimately intended to be developed, which it probably will be, they may not, or we may not be looking for like something substantial or expensive covering the whole property, but what staff had in mind was some basic streetscape improvements that are not going to cost a ton of money and can be either removed or accommodated when the site eventually is developed, which is what we all want to happen. Is that Richard? Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
I guess the only thing that I'm thinking about now is that initially it was for the envelope that would be severed and developed over time. But with the removal of the easement now, I guess, is it for the whole property or just that portion? Right? I don't think we're going to landscape the whole entire thing off its course, but I guess we have to figure out whether or not we're going to only do a portion that's landscaped. That'd be a question for the committee. If we landscape the whole thing or just a portion.
Carl?
Oh, sorry. I thought that was a question for me. I was going to, but yes, I think the development agreement would outline how that would be implemented. So perhaps the committee's decision can spell that out if the committee wants to establish that recommendation.
No more questions? Okay, if the committee's ready, we'll make a decision on the revisions.
Mr. Chair, I guess I have a follow-up question as far as the
go
timeline
ahead.
is for either for Carl or for Richard. What would be a reasonable time frame? So if it's hinged on if they're going to be getting a building permit or not, is it a reasonable ask to say that they could, file for a building permit and go through the process and have that done in 2 years? Is that doable? Or sorry, a year, is that doable? To go through the whole process?
Carl?
Yeah, so I think it depends on a few things. Assuming, and I don't know for sure, assuming that the property owner puts the property up for sale, and it takes some time to sell, and it takes some time for the buyer to develop, and typically they've done a fair bit of work on planning their concept before they even file anything formal with the town for site plan approval. So I think, given that the process before a building permit can be obtained, I think Yvonne's point was reasonable, that the 2 years I think provides a reasonable window for the applicant to sort of decide which approach is likely going to work.
Okay.
I have another comment. I guess the only thing would be that 2 years would be the most time it would take.
So if we're ready to make a motion here, what kind of wording, how do you want that motion worded then?
That was the thing. The owner shall shall enter into a development agreement with the town to ensure that the land is meaningfully developed within a time frame of 2 years in the event that the property is not sold. That would be the general gist of what I'd be looking for. The front portion of the property.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you guys are in agreement with that wording, can I have Richard repeat it for the minutes, for the decision? If you're in agreement with that wording, do you mind if I have Richard repeat it for the decision? Sorry, Richard, do you mind? The owner shall enter into a development agreement.
It's a development agreement within a 2-year time frame in the event that the land is not, that the front portion of the land is not developed. Does that make sense?
I think I'm going to tweak it. Do you mind if I tweak it
Yeah,
and just
speak.
repeat it to you? Okay. The owner shall enter into a development agreement with the town which requires the severed portion to receive an approved building permit or provide landscaping along the William Street East frontage of the subject property within a time frame of 2 years from the date of execution of an agreement.
That sounds good.
That's fine with me.
So can I have a motion, moved by Yvonne, seconded by Stephen, all in favor? Carried. This concludes the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We'll now move to the next item on our agenda. Item number 6, priority issues. We have none. Project updates, we have none identified. Our next meeting, Planning Advisory Committee meeting, December 14th, 2023. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Stephen.
I'll just be a few moments with the decision, okay?
I have to run a printer.
Sorry.
To go print it.